Donald Trump's legal troubles are overshadowing what he really wants voters to focus on, his attacks on Joe Biden. As we noted this week in Playbook, David Pecker's testimony is reminding Americans of the very messy, very chaotic issues his campaign is working to make them forget. And it's doing so just as voters' perceptions of the Trump era have started to improve. Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California. Congressman, good morning.
Started to improve because apparently people have amnesia.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real part of this where, you know, when you talk to folks, they forget that the pandemic was as bad as it was, especially that time. And so for a while, the Trump folks were saying, you were much better off 4 years ago.
4 years ago, this week was when he told people to drink bleach.
Now we're in
really
COVID,
was.
so it's a little bit different. And Congressman, this is a huge part of this election, right? Trying to get voters to remember for the Biden folks and for Democrats, like what they felt like during the Trump years, because they seem to have forgotten.
Well, I think we're all starting to feel it right now. I think, one, I mean, we have complete chaos, someone that's trying to dominate all of our lives, clearly a con man and a criminal, and then, of course, a contrast, which is someone that is actually doing right by the American people, getting things done, passing a major foreign aid package, building bridges and roads across the country. And so the contrast could not be more clear. You have corruption, you have chaos on one end, and then we have a good, decent man who's actually working for the American people. So I think the contrast is going to become more and more clear as we move forward towards November.
I think it's really rich that you have Donald Trump complaining about the fact that he does have to be in court. It's dawning on him what it means to be a criminal defendant, and that he argues that is keeping him away from the trail, which is relevant given that you have Joe Biden really hitting the trail. You have the Biden administration, though, trolling Trump for not campaigning on Wednesday, writing, quote, "We found out where Trump was. He was golfing, not campaigning, golfing. But when your entire campaign is about enacting revenge and retribution for yourself and doing nothing to make Americans' lives better, it makes sense you wouldn't feel the need to actually speak to voters."
I mean, that's absolutely correct. I mean, Donald Trump, when he is not obviously causing crimes and trying to hurt the American people or destroy our institutions, he's out there golfing, hanging out at Mar-a-Lago, throwing parties, spending all of his time on social media, on his social network, attacking the courtroom, attacking the judges, attacking the jurors. And so I think what we're at right now is a moment, I think, for us as a community and as a country, we've got to focus on the stakes. The stakes could not be higher. I mean, Donald Trump is a criminal and a con man. He should not have the support of the American public. The Republican Party in Congress has turned their back on democracy, turned their back on doing the right thing. Will do whatever they can to support him and what he wants to accomplish for himself and for the country. And then we've got to focus and remember that this is about an election that's going to have huge consequences on the future of our country, of our families, what happens to us in neighborhoods across America. And so we're being reminded now with both of these trials, I think, how high the stakes are.
How high the stakes are. You had the split screen this week of literally Donald Trump in court looking small and diminished, very unpresidential, and President Biden out across the country speaking to labor members, going down to Florida, talking about the abortion ban that's going to take effect there, and just the stakes for the American people in this election.
And then you had the Supreme Court articulating the stakes, because you were reminded what happens when a court gets stacked with justices that are more interested, as someone put it, in being Republicans than they are in being justices.
Yes. Amy Milhauser, she tweeted that the thing to remember about the Republicans on the judges that control the Supreme Court is that they are Republicans first and judges second. And that sent me back when I heard that.
Right, especially because I think a lot of people see that and they feel powerless, right? They feel like it is a thing that happened. It is a product of the Trump years. My question to you is what do you tell people where we go from here?
Well, I think first, and let me just respond also, I think, you know, and Trump is, by the way, sleeping through half the trial. And so this idea of
they say it's cold in there.
And you know, exactly, the idea of stamina and who's too old and who's ready to lead. I mean, Donald Trump is falling asleep in all of these, you know, these presentations. The jury's out there watching this man acting the way he's acting, a fool in the courtroom. But I think where we go from here is I think we got to be committed first and foremost to getting the truth. I think what we heard from the Supreme Court should be chilling to all of us in this country. The fact that you can have presidential immunity for essentially committing crimes is insane. And so it's also a reminder of how high these stakes are on the court. These Supreme Court justices were put on many of them by Donald Trump. And so we've got to be very thoughtful about what the election means, including for our legal system and the courts.
I got to imagine that if you are a member of one of the bodies that is intended to be a check on executive privilege, that it is almost an affront to the role that you play as a member of the House of Representatives to be like, oh, don't worry, he has absolute immunity, then he has absolute power, and then there are no longer checks and balances.
And then he's a king, and isn't that the opposite of what we said we wanted to do?
I mean, this case is so important. This idea that you can walk into the presidency knowing that you can commit crime after crime after crime and have no consequence because you're the president of the United States goes against everything this country was founded on, what we believe in. And so this is an incredibly important case. It is scary to watch. I think you're seeing folks like Justice Sotomayor and Kagan, obviously, leaning in and saying the right thing and actually supporting democracy. But these Trump-appointed judges are just causing incredible, I think, harm to our institution as well.
Congressman, really quickly, Trump is saying to his supporters, I'm in there fighting with them. I am fighting for you. But he's actually sitting in there quiet. Yeah, as you said, we see him. He said he wasn't asleep. The people, Maggie Haberman, said he was asleep. And so the question that I have is, there's a huge difference what he's presenting to his supporters. And so they are seeing him as someone who is being aggressive and he's being that manly man. But that's not how he is acting in court because the judge is not allowing him to act that way.
It's like the Wizard of Oz when the curtain came down and you see him doing the things and Dorothy was like, who are you? He's like, I'm the great and powerful Wizard of Oz. But the wizard is just a man behind the curtain, and it looks like Donald Trump's just a man in the courtroom.
I mean, look, he is defeated. He's obviously sleeping. He's tired. Low energy Donald Trump, sleepy Donald Trump. And I think we're seeing him for the con man that he is. He is a liar. He tries to destroy our institutions. He's there diminished, while at the same time we have President Biden actually leading the country, actually doing the right thing, getting desperate to humanitarian aid, not just to Gaza, but to Sudan, to Haiti, to Armenia, to all these places that need our support. And I think that's what the American people are going to see, what they need to see. And they need to remember, and we're being reminded, that Donald Trump is sitting there, a diminished person who tried to destroy our country, overthrow our government, paying off hush money to prostitutes and people that he's sleeping with. And that is what the American public is seeing right now.
I think Stormy Daniels would say she was an adult film star.
Adult film star.